All right, let's talk about a concept that could, no joke, completely change how you work and even how you live. We're diving into Cal Newport's book, Deep Work. And trust me, it's a total game changer.
So, does this sound familiar? You're busy all day long, your screen is just a constant barrage of notifications, pings, and emails, but at the end of the day, you look back and think, what did I actually do? You feel like you haven't made a dent in the projects that really matter. It's this exhausting, frustrating cycle that so many of us are stuck in.
Well, Cal Newport has a name for this feeling. He calls it shallow work. It's all that low-value, logistical stuff we do while our attention is split a million different ways. It's the real enemy of progress, and the hidden costs, oh, they are staggering.
Now, if we're going to beat this enemy, we first have to understand it. So let's take a closer look at the problem, at this modern world of work that honestly feels like it was designed to keep us trapped in that shallow, distracted state.
This brings us to a really critical idea from a business professor named Sophie Leroy, attention residue. Okay, think of it like this. You're deep in a project, really focused, and you just quickly glance at your email. Even if it's just for a second, a piece of your attention gets stuck back there on that email. And when you turn back to your main task, there's this invisible fog clouding your thinking. It just completely tanks your performance.
And you know what? Our work culture basically pours gasoline on this fire. You've got open-plan offices that are practically engineered for interruptions. We're constantly switching contexts, and we fall into what Newport calls the metric black hole, where we mistake being visibly busy for being productive. Here's a crazy stat for you. One executive actually calculated that just processing a single email cost his company nearly $1. Now imagine that, times thousands of emails across the entire company. Yikes!
Okay, so that's the bad news, but there is some really good news. There's an antidote. It's an incredibly powerful skill that's becoming so unbelievably rare, it's basically a modern-day superpower. Let's break it down. So here they are, side by side. Deep work, it pushes your brain to its limits, it creates brand new value, and it's tough for someone else to just replicate. Shallow work, yeah, it's the exact opposite of all that. Now, in an economy that's more and more about automation, which one of these sounds more valuable to you?
This all leads to a simple, but honestly really profound formula from Newport. To get high-quality work done, you've basically got two levers you can pull. You can spend more time, or you can crank up your intensity of focus. And in a world where nobody has enough time, you can bet the top performers are all pulling that second lever. It is all about intensity.
And that's really the bottom line here. In a world that is practically drowning in shallow tasks, the ability to go deep is your ultimate competitive advantage. Mastering this skill doesn't just make you better at your job, it makes you rare. And in any market, rarity always equals value. Okay, so we're all on board with the why. This stuff is important. But what about the how? How do we actually do this? Well, let's get into Newport's super practical playbook for making deep work a real, regular part of your life. He breaks it down into this really clear, actionable framework. First, you've got to pick an overall approach that works for you. Then, you build routines and rituals around it so it becomes automatic. And finally, if you really need to, you can supercharge your commitment with what he calls a grand gesture. And what's cool is, this is not a one-size-fits-all thing. You could go full monastic, like the computer scientist who literally hasn't had an email address since 1990. Or maybe you're more bimodal, where you split your week, like Monday and Tuesday are for deep stuff, the rest is for shallow. There's the rhythmic method, where you just build a consistent daily habit. And finally, the journalistic approach, where you learn to squeeze in deep work whenever a free moment pops up. But no matter which philosophy you pick, you absolutely need rituals to make it stick. See, willpower is a finite resource, and rituals save it for the actual work. Think about Charles Darwin. He had this incredibly structured day of walks and study. You need to decide, where are you going to do this? What are the rules, like zero internet? And how are you going to support yourself so you don't have to break your focus? And then sometimes, you just need to send a massive signal to your brain that this is serious. J.K. Rowling, when she was struggling with distractions while finishing the last Harry Potter book, made a grand gesture. She checked into a 5-star hotel suite just to write. That investment of money made it impossible for her to slack off. It's all about putting some skin in the game. But, you know, this isn't just about being more productive. Newport makes this really powerful argument that practicing deep work is actually a direct path to a more fulfilling and meaningful life. Let's explore that for a minute. Newport tells this amazing story about Rick Fuhrer, a master blacksmith.
To forge a sword, the guy needs 8 straight hours of intense, uninterrupted focus. One little slip-up, and the whole thing is ruined. That total immersion in his craft, it gives him this profound sense of purpose that mindlessly scrolling through a social media feed could never, ever touch.
This goes even deeper, like down to the level of your brain's wiring. Research actually shows we can train our brains to focus more on positive things. But a life of constant, fragmented attention does the exact opposite. It wires our brains for stress and negativity. So by choosing deep work, you're not just getting more done, you are literally shaping a more positive, more rewarding experience of the world.
And this connects perfectly to that psychological state we call flow. You know the feeling, right? It's when you're in the zone, so completely absorbed in what you're doing that time just seems to melt away. Well, deep work is the gateway to getting more of that feeling in your life. And honestly, flow is one of the absolute best human experiences there is.
So here it is, the ultimate promise of this whole idea. This isn't about working longer, it's about working deeper. 4 hours of truly concentrated, distraction-free work can produce better results than an entire 8-hour day of scattered, shallow effort. That's the dream, right? Elite-level results without the burnout.
So we'll leave you with this one question to think about. That book you've always wanted to write, that new skill you've been meaning to master, that huge complex problem at work you need to solve, what could you truly accomplish if you finally reclaimed your focus? Thanks so much for tuning in.